Lisa's a couple of minutes away. She'll have.
Yeah, I think, Jeannie, you can hear the room, right? So we're good here?
I can hear you and I've started the recording.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Academy Community Center Building Committee. Today is Monday, February 24th. And I'd like to introduce a couple of people who are new to these meetings, but not new to the town. In your screen, you should be able to see Peggy Lyons, the first select person of the town. She'll be on early enough that if you are patient, you'll be able to hear her. We're going to try to put her into the chair comments, excuse me, the liaison comments, which is number 4 on the agenda. And also Ben Whitaker, title Ben, town engineer?
Construction manager.
Construction manager, okay. Ben's relatively new, but he's new to the project. So he'll be reporting a little later under new business. And other than that, we have Peter Horton and Kelly, AJ Miller, Alicia Smith, and myself, Joe Valentine, as members of the committee. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from the January 13th and January 27th meetings. Are there any, we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any, are there any updates, corrections, changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes as they, as submitted, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That's a unanimous approval. So both the January 13th and January 27th meetings are approved. The chair's comments, I'm going to keep them brief, but I did note that there are a couple of key items open from the last meeting. One, and Peggy's going to report on this, is the Board of Selectmen plan to call a referendum. That's something we'll talk about. Peggy will update us on. And the second is that Colliers, the work of Colliers has been let go from the project. Not sure if that's the right word, but they're no longer on the project. But the project responsibility has been transferred to Ben Whitaker, who I mentioned earlier, and is here and will report later in the meeting. Any questions? And we'll get to liaison reports, and Peggy being our #1 liaison. And I'll have to say, this is the first time. No. And this is the first time Peggy's attended one of our meetings, so welcome.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. And obviously, there's been a lot going on with the Academy the last couple of months. And I want to just echo again the board's how grateful we are for all the hard work this committee has done. There's been a lot of heavy lifting. But since the bid came back, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about what do we do? You know, we've got a big budget gap and a lot of uncertainty with the project. And there was discussion about going out to the public to get approval to use the grant monies that we received to help fund the project budget shortfall that we're now seeing. The board did decide to adopt a timeline to go forward and get that approval from the public. And we're targeting the May 6th referendum date. There's also been a lot of conversation about the federal grant and the status of that federal grant. As if you've attended other meetings, we've been talking about since we received notification of that everything was kind of under review from the Trump administration. We did receive an email from USDA saying things that were kind of on hold pending review for this grant. We did get some positive news this last week, though, that the funding had been moved from the federal level down to the local office of USDA. So that's a good sign that the project is moving forward. We have not received the signed agreements back yet, but we were also told that that would become forthcoming soon. So what that means in the federal government these days is still a bit of a question mark. But once you have those signed agreements, typically that means you've got a commitment from the government as a contract. It's a binding contract, which is a good sign that we can move forward with utilizing those funds. And so we're proceeding. I think our board feels that we should keep proceeding as that everything is in alignment, because it could be a week from now we could get things finalized, or a month from now. But keep moving the project along in the process, and because we have to start having some meetings ahead of us. The Board of Selectmen is going to be having a special meeting on Monday night to talk about the question that would be on the referendum ballot, and then that would include a dollar amount for the project, as well as what that resolution would look like, what we're asking the public to approve on May 6th. And then it has to go to the Board of Finance. And then there will be a meeting on April 9th, I think is what we're targeting. We're going to finalize the dates probably next week, where we would formally then call the question, and this would get moved forward to go to referendum. So we have some wiggle room by April 9th, where we can hopefully nail down a little bit more the grant. And then also spend some time putting materials together to talk to the public about the project and the status and where we are. So we're going to be planning to have public information sessions the last couple of weeks in March. And we can basically do those. We can have 2 or 3 up until April 9th. Once the board votes to send the project to referendum, we go into what's kind of considered a silent period. We can no longer advocate for the project. We can provide factual-based information. And we did this last time where we had a document that was just kind of, giving the history and the background of what they're voting on. Prior to April 9th, we can talk about why we're doing this, why we think it's a great thing for the town. And that's something that we want to make sure that everybody understands, why we're at this decision point and why we still think it's a good thing to go forward with the project. So those information sessions will be towards the end of March, assuming everything goes smoothly with both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, where we want to move towards referendum. So we will keep you abreast of any information on the grant situation. Like I said, we're taking good steps forward. It's all positive momentum, but we also know we're under this cloud of uncertainty, just like with any town or state or anybody that is in the situation where they have a federal grant right now. You're just kind of in this gray area. There's a lot going on with the courts, and things like that, but we're going to be proceeding that things are moving along as they should right now. And I think that was something the board felt comfortable doing. And we'll be talking more about that on our March, is it March 3rd, I think is the date, special meeting, which we haven't formally, we're still confirming that with some of the advisors. So, but we're hoping to have it on Monday, that meeting. So that's I think the exciting thing to move, that we're moving forward to do that. And then I think the other thing the board recently made a decision was that we wanted to transition the management of this project to in-house. Last year, the town decided to hire formally a construction manager, a position that we felt was sorely needed, and the town did not have. It had one historically, and we felt it was really necessary given all the different building projects going on in town. We wanted to have an in-house construction manager. We thought this is a good point in this project to transition it over to our in-house person. It was a good point in our relationship with Colliers with the contract. We've gone through the bidding process. And if we get through this referendum and are successful, we'll be going into more traditional, construction management mode. And so it also saves us some money on a project that's very challenged with the budget. So it gives us some additional funding to perhaps redeploy in different ways for the project. So we did that formally, they're all blurring together now, the meetings, but I think it was last week. And so I wanted to introduce, I know Ben has been attending. He works under our facility director, Peter Anderson, who you know, but Ben will now be kind of filling in that gap that Colliers played, and working closely with the architects and with all the town staff to kind of make sure that the project keeps moving forward and is using his expertise. And I thought maybe if Ben wanted just to spend a few words about his background and when he started with the town with us, that would be great.
So the 30-second job interview bio. My name is Ben Whitaker. Started with the town in July. Worked for both the town and the board, managing all their various construction projects. I grew up to 27 active projects right now. Make this one 28. My background, last 20 years, has been in various roles in both facilities, operations, and financial management. Kind of what I bring to an organization is tying those 3 things together. My longest stint was as the Chief Operations Officer at the East Hartford Public Schools. Was there up until late 2023. In that role, I oversaw operations, so finance, food service, food service, facilities, transportation, and also the finance department. So if it didn't have to do with HR and education, I came through my office, did a quick stint at Region 17 as a director of operations and finance over at Killingworth. That lasted about 6 months, and made the decision to take the part of my job that I've always loved and make it my whole job. So that's why I'm here, giving that a try. It's been pretty interesting so far, because my natural instinct is to kind of get involved in everything in an organization. So I try to kind of, varying degrees of success, stay in my lane. But I think what you'll see is I probably look at projects a little more from the financial end than more of a traditional project manager normally would. Like I said, I've always kind of tried to tie together the physical infrastructure with the financial management. So that's a little bit about me. I think I've met most people in the room, and those that I haven't look forward to working with.
Also, a lot of experience with grants as well, which is going to be very helpful because of the complexity of dealing, especially with the federal grants. So we're glad to have him on board.
Anything else, Peggy?
No, I know you're going to talk a little bit about, and I'm not sure how your agenda is structured, a little bit about kind of some of the work that Ben has been doing on the project,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we put him under new business, and the budgets, I believe you were talking about the budgets. That's what we talked about earlier. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis on the budget and what it looks like now, and why it is we're looking to have both grants made available to finance the project directly and not just offset. The one thing that I would like to pull out of place is the relationship with the committee and the project manager. Do you see that being different from Colliers? Maybe either of you can answer that. Different than it was with our relationship with Colliers, or because it's the town directly? What do you see as the relationship? What you're going to do versus what the committee does?
Well, I think you said it well when we were talking about it. It's kind of management versus governance, right? And I think Colliers was kind of providing that management, but now that it's an actual in-house resources, there's going to be better coordination, I think, in terms of the town more proactively managing the project and making sure that we're doing it in a way that fits with how the town manages its buildings, handles the financing ends of it. So there'll be more like seamless kind of partnership in that sense. Because the other thing is we have to live with this building, for a long time, the town, right? So we need to make sure that we're doing things that are going to make that it's built appropriately and runs efficiently as much as possible for the town going forward. So I know that was a headline that Ben talked about versus some of the governance things. I think we need obviously to continue to work with the building committee. But Ben, I don't know if you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, no, I think the analogy I was using is treat me as kind of like the center of the hourglass. So you guys are governance, you have the vision for the project, and you funnel that through me. I take that and push it out to Tom, and we get into the construction team. Then I take everything back from the field, put it through that center again, push it out to you for approval. Ultimately, your role is governance. Your role as a building committee is not to have to manage the day-to-day details of the project, or even some of the higher level things to do with the project. You're really here to govern it. It's my job to make sure that your collective vision is executed properly. So that's what I see my role in with this building committee. This is definitely just from some of the history that I've heard and reading through minutes, just talking to people about it. I think this is a little unique where this committee has done a lot of the detail work and a lot of the design work. I think I've been working directly with Tom and his team on a lot of these. That's pretty foreign to me in the roles that I've had. The building committees that I reported to were, I don't want to say, it's probably an accurate statement to say I brought things to them for the stamp. I figured it was my job, my team's job to make sure that you were always up to date. You always had the right information. You should never have to ask me for anything. I should be providing you the details you need. I'm a systems builder, so I like things in a standardized format. If there's a financial report that the board likes to digest or the building committee likes to digest. We'll work on that and we'll agree upon certain times to present that and we'll get it done. Same thing for any type of report out that you desire from the field. My goal is to build a system to make this easy for you and easy, makes just the project run smoother in general. No drama is how I like to work. We build a system, we build a project. So.
Thank you, man. And Felicia had a follow-up question, so I want to ask Felicia.
We can get into the weeds about exactly what your reporting would be later in the new business. I just kind of wanted to bring up the timeline of this, in that I think that I will say I think Ben is more than qualified to be doing what he's doing. All of that. My exception is the fact that if this was voted on last week by the Board of Selectmen, this meeting is about a week too late in terms of professional courtesy. I feel like as a board, we should have been asked beforehand how we felt about the Colliers contract and turning it over to the town, and also have the chance to sit down and go through the weeds about what Ben sees his role as and how we envision his role before, basically, before my time here. This committee was the one who interviewed the project manager role and brought to the Board of Selectmen who they thought should be hired. And so while we do not hold those contracts directly, it was based on our recommendation. This was done without any formal consulting of us. Yes, perhaps we might have gotten a phone call, but it sounds like the decision was made before we were even aware of it. So that's my objection, the professional courtesy of it. We can get into exactly how Ben envisions reporting back budget and progress status and meetings of that. But frankly, given the communication issues we've had on this board to begin with, this to me is very concerning.
Noted. Thank you, Felicia. Next, I believe that brings us to item 5 on the agenda: review and approve invoice packets, if applicable. I had 2 invoices that I downloaded, but I didn't get a package or a signing sheet with that.
Right, there are 2 invoices. When Colliers was part of the picture, Colliers' representative would prepare a cover sheet and would approach us with his approval to pay and his recommendation that we approve it for payment, approve invoices for payment. Not sure how we want things to work going forward. Ben, what are your thoughts?
So again, this committee works far different than anything I've ever been involved in, where normally it's the project staff, my staff was the one, we go to the committees and boards to get award approval. So you're making the recommendation to the governing body, like the Board of Selectmen, to award a contract. Bringing individual invoices for approval is something that's, I know it's a practice that happens. It's new to me. I really could funnel them to you however you want. By the time an invoice is ever going to touch the committee here, it's going to be vetted. It's going to be valid. So however you want those transmitted, it's not on the agenda for tonight. We've already done a significant amount of financial analysis on the project. There are some issues where we are under encumbered in our design services. Things weren't being booked once they were approved by the committee. On the town side, I think there were some miscommunications on the accounts they went to in our system. That's a whole other discussion. Short answer to that is however you want them presented to you is fine with me, as long as it's just kind of a simple system that we could agree on going forward. So. I can tell you for the other project that I'm involved in that has, let's call it invoice approval in their purview, we simply just add the invoices to the agenda. We bring them up. If there's questions, they ask me the questions and they approve. And we handle all the back office bookkeeping on them. I keep a record of every single invoice that passes projects.
Tom?
So in simple terms, we now submit all of our invoices to Ben in lieu of submitting it to Colliers project leaders. Ben will do his vetting and then issue them to the building committee for approval.
Sounds logical.
So we expect that ahead of time, hopefully, and not at the meeting that we're approving that.
What do you mean by that?
The invoices and the summary of the invoices and the,
Yeah, I would assume the invoices would be in your packet. That's how we run it for the other committees I'm involved in. I don't know how it works with this one, but normally I just include the invoices right in the packet. So whenever you get your normal board packet, that's when those would be there.
great.
So if you had any questions, obviously, bring them up.
Yeah, that's why it's
Yeah,
nice to have a few days so that we can.
for sure. Yeah, no, I never want to see something the day of.
Yeah, if sometimes they'll drop in our lap an hour before the meeting and that doesn't give us a lot of time.
No, they should go with the agenda package. So I don't know how early in advance you normally see those, but whenever you get your full agenda, that should be part of it.
Typically, it's several days in
Yeah.
advance.
Yeah.
So there are two invoices that have been presented to us. Ben, can we talk about them?
Yeah, the two invoices we have are, one is Collier's final bill for their bidding phase.
We don't have,
We don't have a copy.
we don't have that.
We have the QA&M invoice through 131/225 backup, and we have an SES-CX invoice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at that. Looking at the wrong thing. That invoice is from. The QAM is the 2295. Is that what we're talking about?
Let's see, what,
You're talking the amount or the invoice number?
It's
invoice number is
$3,000 for
6373.
professional services and then $4,088.97 for a total of $7,088.97.
I mean, Tom, you want to explain your invoice? I'm sitting right there.
I haven't even seen it, to be honest
Okay,
with you.
yeah, let me pull it up. I had the financial summary from 131, so before those came in.
So typically what the board is looking for is what is being billed versus where we are progress-wise in terms of schematic design development. And then also someone to vet the billable amounts, whether or not they confirm with the project language, mileage, printing costs, all of that, to make sure that everything that's being billed out is consistent with the project language and also the schedule that's agreed upon.
So Ben and I did have a brief conversation about these invoices a few days ago. And the question I brought up on QA&M was that the reimbursable expense request exceeds the amount noted in the contract for total reimbursables. So the question is, we need an estimated additional cost for, to get through construction and closeout. And we also talked about some additional services that have been requested, in preparation for the referendum.
Yeah, so again, I didn't put the financial analysis on the agenda for this week. We were discussing doing that for our next meeting. But there are issues with how the contract was managed administratively. The easiest way I could put that is a purchase order was cut for QAM's base contract. So no reimbursables, no mileage, none of those like extra things that were part of the contract. When the invoices were coming in, regardless of what they had on them, they were booked against that PO from the base contract. So that contract as of today is, or the purchase order is essentially under encumbered by about $83,000. So I've got a schedule of transfers that we could do to get that squared away. Other things like a change order on the contract, there was a $44,000 change order. I guess it was a MEP design change. Purchase order was never adjusted to reflect that. So all those bills were just routing through that same PO. So I've done an analysis, and we looked at that during our meeting as well.
If I can interrupt you, Ben, maybe this is best done offline and brought to the next meeting.
So why don't we just focus on the invoice that's been brought forward? Or
Is that, can we isolate that from the things you're, the.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you were getting into it by talking about overages, so that's a whole other conversation in and of itself. Again, and with limited knowledge of how this project has run and flowed and what the maxes were on some of these reimbursements, I don't know what they are. The conversation I had were these items actually completed? And to the best of my knowledge, these items that are being billed for were completed. So in my opinion, in that case, you pay the invoice. On the commissioning side, I've told them to stop any project activities right now. Their bill for SES was to produce the construction phase commissioning report. They did that, they have delivered it to me, and that's what the charge was for that.
That's this invoice, yes.
Correct.
But back to the QA&M, the original understanding was that there would be $10,000, there would be a $10,000 allowance for reimbursable expenses. And as of the last invoice, $9,645.47 have been billed and authorized for payment. So this invoice here causes us to go over by just over $3,700.
Yeah, now I don't know who authorized those overages. I don't know how you've been dealing with extras on this project, so I really can't speak to that. I don't have
So
experience.
this-
Is that something that Colliers, like, have we completely stopped Colliers?
Yes,
Like, so there's no transition period for them to talk to you about that?
Yes.
Can I simplify this for you a little bit? I understand what Ben is saying. Our invoices for the rest of our bidding portion, which is $3,000, that work is complete, and then about $4,000 worth of reimbursables, which is printing and billing and mileage associated with the bidding process. If your PO doesn't have enough allocation to pay us, then you can't pay us until the PO is revised. So as much as I'd like to get paid, the committee could do one of two things. One, you can authorize partial payment for the amount of our contract, which is $3,000, and then take the rest up later. Or two, I am okay if you just table this until the PO gets extended and you pay us after your next meeting. That's acceptable.
I would rather have the whole financial discussion in one thing. Like, again, if we're talking about the validity of this invoice, I think this invoice is valid. I think you've performed the services on there. But I think the bigger discussion needs to be about the way the project has been accounted for in general. And I have some solutions for that. I'm happy to walk through and present those during our next meeting, have some spreadsheets built, have some transfers that you could authorize to get us back on track. Again, that's a whole conversation that I was told we weren't going to do tonight. So.
Then I guess specifically, I'd like to table the discussion of the QAM invoice until the following meeting, when Ben we could see the whole picture from Ben.
okay. But I do want to raise one more question before we table it, which is that a significant portion of that $4,000 of reimbursable expenses relates to the whole civil survey. And I'm wondering what's going on with that.
So is that
if
a
we
question
can-
we can answer next time?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd like the next time to be including that.
Well, I think the answer to that might be with QAM right now. I mean, reading from the invoice, and again, I don't know who authorized these activities or what their progress was in the project. I'm just reading from the invoice. One's a special permit for land use application fees and associated reproductive costs. And the other one is Cole Civil and Survey for planning and zoning meetings.
What it was.
I mean, typically the architect handles all the planning and zoning and all of that, so that's all well within their purview. It's just the amount of hours that had to go into it, I think, are above and beyond what typically we would expect. However, that has nothing to do to reflect upon the architect and everything to do with the town process.
Now can we table till next?
Yes, we can.
Ben, is that satisfactory for you that we just table it till the next meeting?
Yeah.
I know you made the suggestion,
Not my call.
but I wanted to be sure that there were no other loose ends before we table. And but that brings us to the SES invoice. Is that could we authorize that to be paid, or does that need, or should that be part of the tabling process also?
Sorry, I missed the part where you said that you instructed them to do something.
To stop while we regrouped on this project. If they were continuing any sort of commissioning activities, since we don't have a contractor selected or even if there's going to be modifications to design, there shouldn't be any project activities going on, booking hours for the project until we get all that squared away.
which I agree upon. However, I think we need to discuss who is going to be giving directives to consultants that report to this board.
Yeah, we should have clear lines of communication. Depending on like which things of the board are gonna govern, which things are.
Absolutely. And I'm-
Just so that we're all. on the same
And I'm
page.
gonna throw it out there right now, if the consultant should be reporting to the project manager on the project, not to the board directly. That'd be a very odd scenario. If that's how that's happening, you don't need me there, you don't need me here at all.
I guess as an
If you're gonna have
example,
them go to.
I can't remember of an example where Collier said stop to somebody
Without first asking.
without
the
first
board.
asking us.
No, it's not stop, like stop, go away. It's just like, hang on, pause, this committee's figuring out what we're gonna do with
They
the
never-
project.
There's no precedent for that, so that's a new relationship to us.
Yeah.
They had never done that before, probably, they've never told someone.
I think they have
Pause
done a
your
lot of
activities.
things. So.
Which is
Or-
fine, I just think I think we're talking clarity, we're not talking, is it right or wrong, we're just talking
Role.
roles and making sure we understand.
I will interject on this, because we talked about, as of 3 weeks ago, we didn't even know if this was going forward anywhere. So we said, we cannot pencil down on anything in this project internally. We were like, we don't know if the board is gonna go for a referendum, we don't know if we have the money from the grant, so there was a lot of like, we need to, this is unusual, this is different than I think if you were moving forward normally with the project, then obviously there would be consultation, discussion about what work is getting done and when that would end. But we had many conversations over the last couple of weeks, especially when we got the letter regarding the federal grant, if we were even gonna be able to do the project. So I will take the hit for that, because I said, we gotta stop and put a pause on everything until we
Maybe,
know.
maybe we should hear Ben's status report before we,
Yeah.
because I agree with Peggy. From what I heard, it was pretty clear that what I hear is that the project itself is in jeopardy. And it's going to require a number of things that are not in the control of either the Board of Selectmen or the building committee.
Yeah, I don't want this to be interpreted as a sign of disagreement, just a
Yeah.
sign of understanding.
Yeah, going forward, obviously a new working relationship needs to be established. I think those communications need to be firmed up, and Ben will certainly do that.
Well, especially because the invoice said, what flagged it for me was, again, knowing nothing about the hit, I've never even met the guy before. And the invoice, it said construction phase services. I'm like, wait a minute, why are we getting billed construction phase services? Even I know we're not in the construction phase.
Right.
So I reached out to the vendor who said that was we just finished the construction phase commissioning report. They're like the process, they're gonna use everything. And he's like, I have it, here it is. That's what that bill was for. So I'm like, okay, cool. Stop there for now, and we'll regroup once we figure out the way we're gonna go with this project. That's all. It wasn't like, hey, stop working. Usually when you come into something and there's so much chaos going on with it, a good idea is to go, okay, everybody kind of hang on a second, because the last thing you want to do is start, incurring billable hours for things that don't need to be incurred right now, and then you're going back and doing rework. So that was a stop the bleeding tactic there.
Joan, I haven't heard from you. Have you any comment or anything to interject at this time?
I think it's
Because I'd like to get this, if we can get this paid and move on.
yeah, I think if we set up a proper procedure and we all know how we're gonna work going forward, I think it's gonna make these meetings a lot smoother and be able to work well together. So people were saying that the comments that were coming into my brain were being said by the people that were already there. So I'm good.
Thank you, Joan.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the SES invoice for payment.
Second? I'll second.
Sorry, I was gonna second. Go ahead.
Is there any further discussion on it? In favor, raise your hand. Motion approved. Approved for payment. getting back to the agenda. Item 6, the project management update. Since Colliers is no longer the project manager and we have Ben Slade under new business, I'd like to just move by that one, past that one. QAM update. Tom, anything you'd like to report at this time?
Yeah, we don't really have any technical updates other than technical updates. We are soliciting some proposals and doing some investigation to identify, to provide fees to this board to, one, do additional renderings and provide any marketing support through the referendum process. We've been asked to provide hourly services and not to exceed rate to provide bidding services if the project is going to be rebid after the referendum. We're putting that pricing together for this committee to review. And we are putting pricing together to repackage the documents, incorporate all of what were originally add alternates, make them part of the base bid, make some value engineering changes so that if we do go out to rebid, you have a price to package that stuff together. So we were just working on that pricing, and we'll wait, aside from putting pricing together, we would wait on any direction from the committee before we do it.
The value engineering changes that you just mentioned, those just what was included in the bid, or is there something else that's being?
The Brian and Ben sat down together to talk about the different alternates, how we would bring everything together, and Ben pointed out some potential material changes that could be incorporated to save dollars. No, that doesn't reflect any substantive change to the scope of work. It was just substitutions. For instance, the town of Madison likes to use this hardware product instead of that hardware product.
So I want to hold that because that my budget update is or the update scenario update here is discussing that effort. That's what I was prepared to present for the board today.
Anyways, that's what we're doing. I have no further report.
Thanks, Tom.
Is there any further on, so with the building permit, any other comments from the building department? With regard to the building?
No follow-up with that. We basically have just sit still right now.
And that's the
That's
installation.
This is regarding the installation issue. Brian, I had asked, Brian's on the call. Brian, have you had an opportunity or have you been able to set up a meeting with the building department?
Sorry, where's camera? I was told that they have a third-party reviewer working on the set, and they'll notify me when they have their review complete. I don't know if you want to reach out to the building department and ask them to pause that review as well if there's going to be additional changes. But I have not been notified for a few weeks now.
Brian, you said they. Who are they?
The building department is going through a third-party plan review.
So we're waiting to hear back from the third-party reviewer. Maybe the third-party reviewer has perspective on the building official.
Third party reviewers in the town hired, or is it?
The town engaged them.
That again is a very abnormal, because we had been asking them for months prior to going out to bid if they were going to do a third-party review, and we were told that they were not interested in that and they would do it. And now we're being told that they've hired their own third-party reviewer. Are we is the project going to encumber that expense? Or is that something that the building department is encumbering on their own?
I don't think the building department has the authority to expend project funds on our behalf.
Well, we had offered to them to do a third-party review, and we had a budget line item set aside should they elect to do that. They had declined at the time.
I'd say the cost is on them. That's pretty.
It's not the cost so much. It's the
Process.
information that's presented and how it's presented and how that might affect the outcome. I mean, the cost is probably gonna be minimal for the study, but the outcome of that is, has a very dramatic effect on the project.
Right, which is why we had been asking them 4 months prior if they were going to do a third-party review, what comments they had so that we could incorporate them into documents before they went out to bid, knowing that one way or another, however this insulation thing goes, could have a substantial impact on how the building is built and how much it costs. And now to hear after we've gone out to bid and gotten costs to it, to say now they're looking into it, again, is a concerning breakdown of communication and process.
So we will talk to, staff and see where this is. My understanding was, like, I didn't see it as an external as much as we were going to we have people that handle permitting for us internally for different jobs at times because of staffing constraints. It was more of that approach, not like we're gonna hire and do a full estimate kind of thing. So I will find out the steps. So it was more of a timing issue and getting adequate focus on this. And I know that Tom, there's been discussion with staff about the installation. I just don't know what the resolution's been on that. Talked about that.
Definitely.
So,
Brian.
Yeah.
Brian had the latest.
yeah, so, that was raised, several weeks ago to
Yeah, this-
get a resolution. So
this
let's
is-
just see where it is.
This question's been around for quite some time, and I think you nailed it, Peggy, when you said it's a matter of focus. I think we have to focus on it. So whether the town's gonna hire someone or we're gonna hire someone, but we would like certainly the band, and we should have some input, and maybe the committee needs to have input. We need to focus on, we need to resolve this, because it's a more, I've heard it's a seven-figure difference between what it might be. If we had to put the insulation in, it could be a substantial amount.
Well, there's been a number of discussions about what the alternatives approaches are to that as well. But it was also, keep in mind, the last 2 to 3 weeks, we didn't even know where we were going with the project. So,
Focus.
it focused once again, but now we're proceeding. And, we need to resolve this really before any type of new bid package is put out. So,
So I guess that's my other question. Hey, people are talking, it indicates that we are going out to bid again. I wanted to ask the architect his professional opinion on whether or not this should be rebid, because I certainly, as someone active in the trades who does cost estimates, have a strong opinion on whether or not we should go out to bid, but I'll leave it to our consultant to give his professional opinion on whether or not the project should be rebid.
I personally and professionally think we received solid bids and the numbers are defendable and are viable. I'm hearing from other construction managers, they believe that the bidding market is softening. But it's a gamble. If you go out to rebid, it's a gamble. We have solid numbers, so I'll work with this building committee based on which direction the committee wants to go and the town wants to go. Again, there's no confirmation that, at least I'm not aware of any confirmation that the bidders will hold their numbers without impact to May 6th, or after May 6th.
I have anecdotally heard confirmation.
Okay, so, I think that's a separate conversation, but I think the contractors that have bidded are good contractors. They have a proven track record. I think the number was solid. That's my opinion. I don't believe we necessarily need to go out to rebid. There is the possibility that it could yield positive results, but there's also the possibility that it could cost more. So,
Can I make a motion that we discuss that? Because I've been asking for the past couple of meetings to discuss that. And we've been kicking the can down the road, and I'd like to have a discussion on whether or not we should rebid while we have our liaisons in front of us, so that they know from our mouth exactly how the committee feels, whether or not they take that advice. But I think we should have that discussion.
I guess I would like to hear maybe Ben's presentation first, and then bring up that motion if it's necessary after we've heard what Ben has to say.
We can table it.
Do we have all of the utility flow letters and things like that sent out? Are they all, where do we stand with the utilities?
What do you mean flow letters?
Well, on the electric, do we have, I mean, are they all lined up and in the queue to provide the utilities for the project?
No, because you can't do that until you apply for an actual permit with them. So the contractor hasn't been engaged and, no permit applications have been provided to the utilities.
So Cole Ronan didn't reach out to the utilities yet with their load letters?
We have load letters, those have been prepared, but again, I can't confirm. I have to look into it. I'm not gonna confirm or deny that at this point. But I know we haven't applied for a service, we haven't made service application, so.
Well, I just want to make sure that electric company doesn't say, well, yeah, 6 months from now, when it gets started, and 6 or 8 months later, they might have it ready. So I just trying to make sure they're in the queue.
They're ready to go once everything is given to go, right? That's what you're saying? The load letters and notifying the
Yes,
utility. Okay.
the support information for applying for service is ready to go. The problem is, and I think you're hinting at this, is that, every project we face unique challenges getting the services, especially gas or electric, provided to the building and the service. Who knows what's gonna happen, because Eversource won't give us a final determination or any kind of fixed determination about where they want to bring their service in from, what pole, how it's going to come in until their technical guys actually get out there and review it. But they won't do that until after an application for service has been made. So we're at their mercy, essentially, once they get in the field. We've made our best assumptions as to how we're going to bring the service in, where we're going to bring it in based on preliminary conversations with their technical group, but that doesn't always hold. But that's going down a rabbit hole at this point. It's irrelevant. I have not had the conversation for a while.
Can we move on to the budget scenario update for Ben? Is there any other? Ben, floor's yours.
All right, so kind of exercise number one here, and again, the purview for tonight was asking me was to present this in summary fashion, not detailed fashion. So I just keep that in mind as we go through this. We're not even sharing the document this time. We're talking conceptually here. Step one, when I was engaged by the first selectman on this project, is let's look at the budget that the building committee has recently put forward. That's the 23,950. And compare that with kind of our max funding amount, which is the 23,525, which is your 15.9 referendum number plus the two potential grants, the DCD and the federal grant. So right now, that budget as submitted by the committee is $425,100 over budget. So we said let's try to do three things. Let's try to get project cost down to about 22.5 to give ourselves a little bit more of a buffer with that 23.5. Just in case something happens with the grant, something's considered ineligible, think of it as extra contingency, what have you. Let's see if we can get to that number by not changing substantially the project, doing kind of more like traditional value engineering type tasks. So scenario one, I call it remove enough scope for a $1 million buffer. That's what we're calling that. Scenario two was, if we didn't get the federal grant, what could we do for 20 million? Is it feasible to do a project for 20 million? And if so, kind of what would that look like? Scenario three is, what if we don't get any grants at all, or taking it down to a future referendum. If that didn't pass and the project budget is 15.9, what would that look like? So again, the summary of that was, the process behind that was Brian and I met, as brought up a little earlier, had a really good meeting. We spent about 3 hours hashing out. Brian had a lot of really good ideas for some kind of, like I said, more traditional value engineering items, changes to finishes, changes to ceilings, things like that. That would still give the building, it would still deliver a building that met the intent of the committee. So we ran through that exercise. Unfortunately, we did not come up with another $1 million buffer. We landed at $23,254,000. So we were able to take out about just under $700,000 of cost. The good news about that is it does get us below that 23.5. So if you are checking a box, do you think the project is feasible for that amount of money? I think we're much closer to checking the yes. Scenario 2 is the $20 million scenario. We had outlined some kind of value engineering items. Maybe they would hit 2 and 3, but not hit 1, and vice versa. Most of the things that hit scenario 1 obviously could carry forward into 2 and 3. And where we arrived on that was we were trying to shed, $3 million of project costs, $3.5 million, and really couldn't find a good way to do that without substantially altering, the overall goal of the project. We looked at things. I know that one of the items that have been talked about was eliminating the basement from the scope of the project. There are issues there where we still need to have the bathrooms, we still need corridors to the bathrooms. So we were going around and around in a lot of these items, and we both came to the opinion that the project, as the committee wants to see it built for 20 million, really isn't a feasible thing. And ditto for the 15.9. So the difference between the 15.9 and the 23, where the project budget is, that kind of is your building there. You could do infrastructure for 15.9 probably, but you're not actually going to get a working building that has all the elements in it that you would want. And it also is tough to just hack off one of those elements. Though Brian did bring up a scenario that I think had been discussed with the committee before, and that was demolishing the newer, it's funny to call it 1930s part newer, but the newer part of the building, and just restoring the front part of the building. So you would, but obviously you're losing space, you're losing a gymnasium, but you would still have a community center. So again, not really the scope of today's presentation, but kind of long and short of it is, I think we have a way. Obviously, if as we start to work together, we can bring up all those items we talked about, and save some, throw some out, kind of strategize around those. But the message for today was, I think you can get there for under the max funding amount, 23.5. I don't think you can get there without it.
That was a request, trying to figure out where we're gonna go with this, right? Can we proceed at all, right? And if some of the, especially the federal grant is tied to soft costs, so, if some of those things don't pan out, we can't address some of the costs. Is there buffer zone built into this budget that allows a little bit of buffer zone for things? And it sounds like we can do this, right? We can find things that we need to make it all work and still deliver what people's expectations are. The takeaway I had that unfortunately was that the $4 million option where we only have the one grant, doesn't get you really, there's no one item you can just pull out of the project. And I think that was what he spent a lot of time trying to look and find. So it's really all or nothing in terms of the grant funding where we are. And I think 15.9, we had this conversation a year ago, if you recall, and we knew it was going to be a struggle, but it wasn't as bad a year ago. But now with where the numbers have come out, the reality is that there's just we can't deliver any kind of functioning building for use at 15.9. And so this actually has not been reported yet to the Board of Selectmen as analysis. We will be doing that as a special meeting next week. But it's important because people need to understand that, if they vote no, what does that mean? So it doesn't mean we're not going to be able to build a community center for $15.9 million for what people expect, right? So that's gonna raise a lot of questions about, well, then what's the next step if this fails? So I feel like if you wanted the community center and you supported this in 2022, the price tag has just gone up. So just, well, yes, and the price tag's gone up, but it's gonna be funded by other sources, and we can get it accomplished with the budget. So that was kind of the takeaway I had when I had him kind of work this, and I know you did a lot of this value engineering a year ago. The numbers have gotten bigger since then, even more. The margin of error is greater, and some of the uncertainty was greater. So I thought it was a really helpful exercise, and it gives now a list of things to talk about, like if we're gonna have to find another $200,000 or another there's things to go to talk about within the committee about where do you find those? And you've done some of that already, I know, with a lot of the work that you've been doing. So we will be talking about this at our meeting next week as well. And I think that, I'll be honest, the biggest disappointment to me was the 15.9 can't get me, I think a year ago we thought, well, we'll have a functioning gym, we'll have a functioning art room, we'll have a functioning theater, but we won't have all the other rooms done. That was kind of the messaging a year ago. Now it's, you're gonna have new heating and air conditioning in a building that's not really open for use, right? So, so that was a strong message, I think, that came out of the exercise.
Sorry, can you tell us exactly when that meeting is? Because I'm not seeing it on, is it?
We have not, I'm waiting for confirming, so it's supposed to be, we're tentatively scheduling it for Monday, but we're confirming attendees right
Monday, a week from now?
now.
March 3rd.
Yeah, so it would be a Board of Selectmen special meeting. That'll be in the next week or so.
Thank you, Ben. I don't think personally, I probably speak for others here, that I don't think anything you said was shocking to us. We spent hours and hours and hours pouring through this building, these plans over and over and over again. So it's good to hear your confirmation that,
Yeah.
yes, the things you've been saying and thinking are accurate, right? And I don't think there's anything.
It's a matter of degree. I mean, we were thinking that, $20 million could give us, a reasonable building. And now that the ante's gone up, and we need the full 23 or whatever the number is to get a building that was what was expected from the original referendum in 2020. I believe, Felicia, you had something you might want to add. I don't know if we have to add it under new business or.
It just goes back to, are we rebidding or are we not, now that we know that we just reconfirmed what we've all been saying, which is this is a full $24 million project. So the bids went out, we got the solid bids back, but the alternates, maybe we're switching out a few material costs, but nothing substantial. So again, is it worth the risk going out and rebidding it versus just asking the lowest bidders if they would hold their bids beyond? Because I think, what was it, the bids run out sometime in March on the 100-day wait period. We'd be
Yes,
asking for them to hold them
6 more weeks.
6 more weeks.
No, that's much, yeah. Well, more than 6 weeks, about 7 weeks.
Right, so anecdotally, I have heard that the lowest 2 bidders are willing to hold it. I think that anecdotally, that is what it is. But I think we should have a discussion whether or not it is a smart move to rebid. So going back further, I think we can all agree that these bids, these packages, the architect certainly did an amazing job packaging them up. They were under the gun to really get them out on a timeline that, again, was forced upon this committee and not selected by this committee. So these bid documents were put together quickly so that we could meet that original March referendum date. And that's why they went out sort of as they were with the alternates and all of that. Now that we're coming back saying we have more time, that's great. However, we have a very different scenario and bidding climate out there now than we did when we went and bid this out prior to the current situation. So again, whether or not the package was no fault of your team who did amazing work and worked very long hours and weekend hours, yes, we could repackage this and clean it up a little bit, but is it worth the risk of doing that?
I've had done a little bit of this before, and there's more than one thing to consider than more than risk. It's, you know, the bidding package as it went out had some significant variations in the ad alternates. Putting those in reduces the risk of any changes that would add cost later. So it's more than the original cost now versus the original cost. It's the cost we have now, or the bid we have now, plus whatever change orders we might get due to the variability that we see and what we saw in the ad alternates. So the cleanup can actually, you know, is a part of a way of saving money by making putting the ad alternates in and clarifying the details behind them. And it's that versus taking what we have now and then taking the bids we have now and adding the change orders that are possible in that, in a scenario where the specifications were not taken the same by each of the bidders based on the variability in the cost base.
Right, I mean, I think that comes down to, you know, not having seen all the architectural notes, whether or not it was truly missed scope or whether it was, right, if it's missed scope and they come to us and say we missed the scope and it's in the documents, they own it, whether or not they put a price to it. So that's not a change order, that's a you own it, whether it's missed scope or not. So again, not knowing whether the different interpretations of the scope of the project are due to them not reading carefully enough, which I think some of them have admitted to, versus there truly are some conflicting notes or some missed notes. That again is the risk factor. And then if we're just talking about the ad alternates and whether or not we get change orders out of the ad alternates, that to me is pennies compared to what the MEP packages could come back as now versus 3 months ago. That's the real cost driver. It's the MEP packages, it's the commodity packages of how much framing costs and everything like that. That I think trumps potential cost savings from going through and buttoning up those ad alternates.
That tells me that you're going to have a contractor who's going to go bust.
No.
Trying to fill this, trying to
Just
fill
so
it.
I'm clear, are we having this conversation now? Are we adding it to the agenda?
Yeah, that's true. We were having
This to me is a
conversation.
budget scenario conversation, because this could very much impact our budget, whether or not we're going out to bid again.
Okay, let's step back. That's a valid point. Peggy, question.
I was just gonna make a suggestion. I think Ben is also not prepared he has opinions on this as well. I'm wondering if you just add this to the next agenda, because then you as a committee can decide if you want to make a recommendation, you know, but I think it'd be better to have people to formulate your opinions and.
Okay.
That's just a suggestion I'm making. I don't know. I know you have some views about this as well, and maybe this is better taken for another conversation.
But we can have it in a meeting, not in a backdoor meeting, right? We can have it
Okay.
in this.
You add it to the next agenda.
Would you, rather than discuss it now, would we, that way we need a motion, we'd have to add it, should add it to the agenda because it wasn't in the scope of what we wrote down here.
Well, I think.
But if we have it for the next, we just add it to the next meeting, that's a simple, just add it to the agenda. There's no vote,
I think that.
no discussion
March,
required.
early March.
Pardon?
Is the
It
next
it
one?
would be, it's the second Monday in March, whatever that is.
The 10th.
The bids expire on the 20th.
Pardon?
The bids expire on the 20th of March.
Right,
is that
yeah. So we have a meeting between now and then. We can have this conversation.
Ben, was the anticipation that if the project was gonna be rebid, it would be rebid after referendum?
Yeah, I assume so, but I'm confused at the flow of these meetings, like, you normally have action items, you make a motion, you discuss it, then you vote on it. Like, we're all over the place here, like, this is not, I don't think this is a great format. That's another item that's not on the agenda, but I'm just gonna make that, because like, yeah, like, answer that question, you're into a whole nother Where in the agenda did we say we were gonna discuss that?
Right, well, we
Again,
got
I
a
would
little ahead
like
of
to
ourselves on
state
this.
that we, as a committee, are never asked what goes on the agenda. We are just given the agenda. And there have been multiple times that I've brought topics up previously for discussion that have never been added to the agenda. And that is, I think, why we continue to have the same discussions over and over again, because they are not given credence and they're not put on the agenda for an actionable vote.
Yeah, your chair sets the agenda. That's why I'm
Right.
very.
So I would like to
interested.
formally request that we do have the agenda emailed out so that we can have actionable votes. And this is not the first time I've been asking this for the flow of the, so, right, if we're bringing on a new PM because we all kind of agree that there's communication and process issues, which I don't think we were even asked if that's why we should bring on a PM or if we should even bring on a new PM, which is another discussion. But if now, with this opportunity, we should discuss the process and the flow of how these meetings work, by all means, let's put that on the agenda. But let's also see the agenda and have time to discuss what we agree should or should not be on the agenda, rather than it just being sent out to us. And then not having the proper format to discuss our concerns.
Fair enough. Point taken.
So do I
And,
need to make a motion to put both those items on the agenda for next time?
Both being,
Both being, I move to make
You don't need to vote on
You
that.
don't.
You're just,
Okay.
he's acknowledging
have-
it, put them on the
Can
notes.
we have an agenda item about discussing whether or not this should go out to bid? And can we have an agenda item about how our agendas get formed? And the general timeline and flow of information for this project. And who it's released to. Because that has been a concern as well. Some people get it, some people don't.
I'm supportive of having an agenda item about talking about the rebidding. I think it makes sense to have that present. I want some time to think about it myself. It's the first time we're talking about it. So I think it makes sense.
Okay, so if we're back onto the agenda, is that the relationship between the ACC, BC, and the project manager?
I think that's what Peggy talked about earlier, but
Do we want to dive into that, or is that another discussion that we need to take?
We said at the beginning.
What?
Right.
We discussed that at the beginning.
yes.
So I have more process questions about exactly how that flow goes.
Well, that's part of, I believe that's part of what we requested, and we said we were going to put on the agenda for the next meeting.
That's the second agenda item being added.
Yes,
This discussion about this relationship.
right.
More formal
Well-
to develop a process.
We talked about processes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked high level earlier,
Yes.
and then the next meeting, you can kind of get into specifics about how what decisions are being made by the building committee, how the information flows from town staff to the building committee. That's,
And specifically about, and
I'd love to have
there's a
something to
specific example
react
of
to for
everybody.
that.
Pardon?
I'd love to have something to react to for that. So
You have a flow chart
I
or
don't know,
something?
Ben, maybe you can offer a proposal for how you have seen this work well in the past with the construction
Like I said,
manager?
yeah,
Or
this
would you
is,
like us to?
this is far different than anything I've ever experienced, so, I don't really have an opinion on that. Again, I'm here at the request of Peggy, representing the town on this project. And again, where I can add value is kind of being set at an hourglass, but I don't know, just based on what we're talking tonight, that might not be possible for this group to do, or even desirable for this group to do, which is okay. But I don't have any frame of reference for what's happening here.
So with all, poor Ben is in the hot seat. With all due respect, I am the only one sitting at this table who's both done Ben's job and Collier's job. I know what, granted from the Collier side of things, but I know typically what a building committee, how it functions, and sat on a couple of those, not public building committees, but private building committees with me. I mean, I think we have a pretty good idea and we were working towards that idea. So again, for this to all be switched up on us without kind of our consensus or even input, it's, I don't quite know where our relationship is. As Ben was saying, you know, it does sort of feel like we're being asked to rubber stamp some things. So I think somebody, not us, because we're the building committee, but somebody needs to come up with, Colliers has a contract stating, this is what we provide, these are the services we provide, this is the number of meetings, this is how we present it to you. There's a contract, and we can go down the line and tick off whether or not they're delivering on that contract. That's not this discussion, whether or not they delivered on that contract, but there is at least a contract in place. Understanding we're bringing it in-house, that's fine, but there still needs to be a flow of what we're expecting the PM to bring to us, and then what in return we're expected to vote on and react to.
I think
So
that
somebody needs to lay that network and that framework out.
So I think that that's something that we'll be happy to do, is give the board of selectmen wrote the charge for the building committee and appointed the people to the building committee. So we'll go back through, I'll sit down with Ben, we'll go through the charge of the building committee. We also have another building committee that has been very efficient for the new school, right? So that's a model, and I will sit down with the chair of that and talk about how their processes are as well. And let's try to, we'll come back, Ben can come back with, here's a recommendation about how information can flow better. I don't think tonight having debate about it is really productive.
It's not a debate. I just, again, I'm, as a member of this building committee this is the first time I'm being formally told of this. I think that is the way it should go. And for you to say that the other building committee is running well, it's the same contract being used on that building committee. And furthermore, I just heard from you pretty much sum up that you feel because we were put in place by the Board of Selectmen, that final say goes back to the Board of Selectmen. So just want to sum up what I just heard.
I mean, the reality is that's how these building committees are put together. We don't have to have a building committee on every project, but we wanted to have one because this is obviously a community-driven project. It's not Board of Selectmen driven, really. It's ultimately the community that wanted this. They voted for it. So we put it together a building committee. Clearly, some things maybe weren't functioning to everybody's benefit before, and so we're going to have an opportunity to take a fresh look at it. We're at a good point in the project to do that. And we can certainly come back with some recommendations about processes going forward and to see how those might work better. That's all. Every building committee is different. It has different personalities, different experience levels. And, you know, we can certainly do that to make sure that people feel that they're getting, that the process is working the most efficiently, I guess, and making use of everybody's time. So you have your personal experiences in these roles. Ben has his. Everybody on here has their own personal experiences, how they worked on committees. And I think that can come together with an agreement about how this committee can proceed. But like I said, the last couple of weeks, we didn't even know if we could move forward with the project. And we're going to have to go to referendum. And the primary focus right now is about getting the project messaging out there and getting approval from the public so we can spend additional funds. So we can then have big discussions about the budget and what we want in it and what we don't want in it. But right now, we need to just get the public to support spending additional funds on the project. To me, that's the mission critical piece here. You have a beautiful design that was done, and you know, part of the services that I'm hoping the committee will see wisdom to include is having something like a virtual walkthrough of what the building is going to look like, so we can show the public, look at what you're going to be getting for the additional funds. You know, trying to really bring to life a lot of things that have been happening just in meetings and conversations, and reminding people about why we want the community center. Like, to me, that's the most important thing, probably over the next couple of weeks or a couple of months until the public votes on it. And then ensuring that when we give them a number to approve, that's the maximum number, and then we can deliver a community center to them for that number. And that was something that I think part of the exercise that Ben was conducting was just kind of going through again, poking holes in it and making sure that that number was going to work. And, you know, there was a confidence level that we will be able to get there if we get the additional funding approved. So I understand that there's, frustration about process and approvals and who's included and what, who's not included, but we'll get that ironed out. But I think right now, we really need to focus on getting this out to the public and getting approval so we can actually get the project moving. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Peggy. Any further discussion, or can we move on to the public comment? Peggy, you have the board there. This is the time for public comment. If
No
anyone-
hands are raised.
Pardon?
Jean's, no hands are raised, so.
Oh, that was Jeannie, no hands are raised.
Yeah.
Okay, then, with no public comment, I move to adjourn. All in favor, aye? So moved.
Okay, all right.